When you look at how Norway has actually dealt with the pandemic, it's been dealt with much better than in many other countries. What exactly does that mean for monetary policy going forward?
Well, let me first underline that that also, like the world economy, our economy, the Norwegian economy, entered a historically severe downturn from March this year and onwards, and we're still into that situation. So, given the present outlook that we present today, we still need a very expansionary monetary policy for more than one year or so looking forward. But then it's correct that if you compare our today's forecast for the policy rate with the path that we presented in September, it's the first increase. The first cautious increase in the policy rate will take place somewhat earlier in 2022 than we foresaw a few months ago.
Governor Tom Keene in New York, wonderful to have you with us again. Tell us about Norway and the weak dollar. The fact is there's been a decades-long strong dollar against krone. It's been absolutely remarkable to see. Finally, it rolls over, a little more strong Norwegian krone. Tell us your view of a weak U.S. dollar from November.
It's hard, at least for me, to explain movements in the biggest currency in the world, the dollar. It's the world currency. Compared to that, the Norwegian krone is quite. Our economy is quite small, so the krone exchange rate vis-a-vis dollar, it's a follower. It follows, so to say. But then there are some special features of our economy which you put weight on when we seek to explain the krone developments, and that is the link to the oil and to the oil price. And the second factor which is there is, as a small open economy, we're not close to being a safe haven in the currency market. So we experience when risk is high and with great uncertainties and development of that direction in the world economy, the krone has a tendency to weaken, and the opposite when there are more positive news. For instance, as regards the access to a vaccine towards COVID-19. And that, I think contributes to explain the more recent developments. The oil price have not come back, but it's close to come up to, say, around $50. And positive news to all of us, we now can foresee that a vaccine will be available in our country and in our neighboring countries early in 2021.
Governor, given the relative strength of the economy, how do you justify the weakness in the currency?
It's difficult to explain. If I go back, and you can test that against our forecast, if I go back 2-3 years, long before the pandemic hits, we were on a good path. Unemployment was very low. Prospects were positive, and still we experienced that, and we forecasted in our case that we would see going forward a gradual strengthening of the krone. That has been a typical pattern in our forecasts. While we have experienced the opposite, and I think the main explanation is the fact that Norway is a small open economy. The currency is affected by events all over the world, and it's in that, as I said, it's a follower currency.
Yeah, and Governor, just to make sure I understand, earlier in the year, you basically reinstated the currency intervention tool. Are you still ready to use that? And do you worry about being labeled a currency manipulator if you do?
Well, if you point to the efforts or the measures we took in March, as like many other countries, central banks, we had our own liquidity measures. We provided the banks and the market with massive amounts of krone, And then we, for the first time since the late 1990s, we announced that we were ready as a bank, and the Norges Bank was ready to intervene in the currency market. And we did that, but with very limited amounts. We haven't drawn back that announcement. We could do that if the circumstances come back. But since March, April, luckily we have all experienced that we haven't the same turbulence in financial markets, and the same applies to the krone currency market, which now functions in more normal than it did in a few weeks, a couple of weeks in March.